From the Wayne County Courthouse in Goldsboro, North Carolina, Wayne Goldsboro Television brings you the meeting of the Wayne County Board of Commissioners. The meeting begins shortly with an agenda briefing, then the regular meeting will begin soon after. Please stand by for the Wayne County Board of Commissioners meeting.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's wake up. Let's cover the agenda if we would. Mr. Aycock, you'll do the invocation this morning, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Gurley, pledge allegiance.
Yes.
We'll have approval of the minutes. And is there any adjustments to the agenda, Mr. Wood?
Yeah, we've got two adjustments we'd like to put on. One is, I think Marcia just handed out to you a memo from Allison Spade. This deals with the JCPC award of a grant. It's for $95,090. This money comes from North Carolina Department of Public Safety. We're really just a pass-through to give it to them, and then they send it to the Methodist Home for Children. So that's what the memo is all about there, and we'd recommend that you add that to the agenda and vote on that. That way we can go ahead and get that money in process. The second item is I've given you a memorandum dated yesterday. We interviewed 3 firms yesterday on construction materials testing at the Maxwell Regional Agricultural Convention Center. As it says, we took requests for qualifications on June 16th is when we advertised it. They were due back July the 5th. Again, we selected 4 firms for interview. Only 3 showed up, but after considering their experience, references, and other criteria, the committee of Noel Woods, Kendall Lee, and I recommend you select ECS Carolinas LLP for this work. They're located in Greenville, North Carolina, and several other eastern North Carolina locations, including Wilmington. They employ about 120 people and have a full lab for their testing located in Greenville. Their close proximity to Goldsboro will affect pricing, as all of the firms charge from the time they leave their offices to go to the site and go back to their offices. Their hourly fee schedule was the most competitive. This project will be billed on the number of hours spent on specific job categories listed on the hourly fee schedule. So taking all that into account, we're recommending you go with ECS Carolinas LLP, and the motion would be to authorize me to negotiate a contract with them for this work. The reason we're asking to add it to it is TA Loving is getting close to where they need these folks, and so we need to move on it and not waste 2 more weeks on it.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
will these 2 changes be under new business or?
New business.
That's what I was just
Allison
Yeah.
said you're going to put hers on her consent agenda.
Well, I think we'll go ahead over
Okay.
it. I just put both of them.
So we are going to new business on both those
Right.
with the
Right.
material. I was going to say materials testing number 7 and the other number 8 because I'd already marked it on my paper.
Okay.
Okay. After that, we're going to have a special recognition. Oh, were there any other changes to the agenda that need to be made?
That's all I have.
Okay.
Marcia, do you have anything else? Tom?
Okay.
That's all we
Thank you.
have.
Thank you. And-
Go ahead. Go ahead. You ain't got any business here. Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say then, we'll have a special recognition. I think Curtis Shiver is going to be here this morning for the Wayne County Livestock Association. That's what I got, something from Kevin late yesterday afternoon for him. And then we'll have a presentation on a book from Wayne County Courthouse Bell by Sheldon Smith. Public comments after that. And do we have anything for appointments?
We have one.
Got one. At 9:30, we'll have a public hearing to receive public comments on the Canterbury Village and North Creek subdivision street. Any comments?
I'd like to make a few. One is, if you go to the memo that I sent you, on that, it's on page 40 of the packet. I'd like to just go through that with you a little bit. First of all, what's not in the memo is, as of this morning, we have valid signatures of 85. And the minimum that we need is 91 for this to reach the 75% threshold. We also do not have the 75% for linear footage either. This started out when we had received the petitions before. We had 102 lots out of the 122 who had signed up for it. Again, they needed 91, so they were about 11 positive. In the last few days, we've had a number of people call Marcia to have their name withdrawn, and she has a list of those, but we'll be going over all of that this morning at the meeting. So, as this memo says, the public hearing was recessed until today, and the reason for that was to give the engineer time to finish. And as y'all know, we sent the letter to the property owners, and that's on page 42. That had the estimated amount of the special assessment, which would be $18,177.32, and that assumes that you're paying for it over a 10-year period. If you do that, then it's $1,817.73 on an annual basis. Back to my memo on page 40. Here's the breakdown of the costs. The construction costs are estimated at $1,982,182. Phase 1 engineering study and cost estimates was separate. That's $28,250. He has in there to do a topographic study is $12,000. Phase 2 project design and bid and contract documents, $158,575 for Phase 2 engineering and inspections. We put $5,000 in for possible boundary line surveying, because some of this is going to come down on these obstructions. You know, you have to go 30 feet from the center line. Well, some people may dispute that, so we may in fact have to have a survey crew go out there and identify that property line. And then the administrative cost, or the legal advertising and mailing of the first-class letters, and that's $1,449. So the total is $2,199,456. You divide that by 121 lots, and so the total assessment is $18,177.32. That's the annual assessment. Would be, as I said, $1,817.73. And the monthly increase in property tax escrow for mortgages would be $151.48. So that's the impact on each property. And we would also be charging the 5% annually on the remaining balance of it. To compare that, the North Carolina DOT's estimate was $3,007,000 for the construction cost and the engineering and inspection. So when you get all of that, that's the cost comparison there. So it's about $800,000 less than what DOT had put in originally. The first item on the agenda is to hold a public hearing on this matter. Property owners were mailed the enclosed letter on Friday. They should come prepared to tell us if they want to remain on the petition or remove their name or to add their name. Please note, as stated in the letter, that any joint-owned property must have the signatures of all joint owners to be a valid positive vote on the petition. And one thing Marcia and I want to be clear about is we have taken emails saying they want to stay or delete, but if they're going to add their name to the petition before we finalize it, and you can go ahead and vote, but before you finalize it, they would need to actually come in and physically sign on the petition so that all that's valid. But we are taking emails and oral comments about wanting to be removed from the petition. Once we determine who wants to add or delete their name, Chip Crumpler will determine if both thresholds for a valid petition remain in place. A, it's got to be signed by at least 75% of the owners of property to be assessed, and that goes back to the 91 lots. And then B, those lots must represent at least 75% of all the linear frontage of feet of frontage of the lands abutting on the street or portion thereof to be improved. So 75% of the lots have to petition, and they have to represent at least 75% of the frontage on the streets. So we have Chip in his office because he's got to do that on the GIS to determine that. So we may, if it's close, we may have to just table that for a little bit and let him make those calculations and get back to us.
That's what I was going to ask you, if we were close, and what options do we have at that point? Do we put it off for 2 more weeks?
Well, as I said in this agenda, if the petition remains valid, you can proceed to the second item on the agenda, which is the final assessment resolution. If it's not valid, then you can't adopt the resolution. Now, that does bring up the issue of how long, if any, would you give them to try to add names, because at some point, remember, we have, I think, 2 more petitions we've received, and so those people, we haven't acted on those because if this went through, it's pretty much eaten up the money for the first 2 years. But if this isn't going to go, then we need to move to the second or third petition. So one of the issues for the board is, you wouldn't vote to turn it down. It just doesn't meet it, so it's not a valid petition. But you could set a time limit and say, we'll give you another 30 days or, 2 board meetings or whatever to see if you can get them. If not, we'll need to move on to the next one.
Mr. Mayor?
I like what you just said, because I think we need to put a time limit on, in fairness to the other subdivisions that are waiting.
Right.
So we could do that, at 9 o'clock, but, I think we need to establish a policy on that. Because the statute doesn't say anything about that.
It's silent on it. And so, because really what it says is, before you can move forward, you have to have a valid petition.
Yeah.
We started off with a valid petition, which is why we're where we're at. But as we said, what is a little different about our policy than state law is we threw in an extra public hearing and said, we're going to give you notice of what we think it's going to cost. State law doesn't require that. And I think what we're doing is far better, because then people know what they're really facing. And with that, we're giving them an opportunity to say, do you want to move forward? And that's the purpose of this public hearing this morning.
One other question. On average, the bids, for example, that have been gathered, the cost, is there a time that those costs are good, like 30 or 60 days?
Well, we haven't bid it yet.
Well, the estimated cost.
This is the engineer's estimate. What engineers do is they look at recent projects they've had or that have been reported in. And so what they look at is they make a determination of all the different units that make up this job. And then they use that pricing. And they may put a little bit of an inflation factor in there because we won't be going to bid for probably 30 days or more because he's got to finish the design. So that's how they get the estimate. So the estimate is just the engineer's estimate on that. Then we'll actually go out to bid on it. But that's how they determine it. That's how, when you get an architect's estimate or an engineer's estimate, that's how they've done all of those, same way.
My point is that I don't think we want to set the time limit so long that the actual construction cost changes. Right?
Well, that's why I would suggest give them till the second meeting in August. That's almost a month. And if you're going to get them, you'll get them during that time. And if you don't, then they've done everything they can. I think that's a reasonable time frame.
I think it's more than fair.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And then you haven't run the risk, Ray, of what you're talking about. These prices should still be good.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, depending on whether it's valid at the time we get there is whether we'll actually go into the finished business.
That's right. And then, so I did want to go over the resolution with you.
Oh, okay.
Because if we get to that point, and we get past all these comments. Okay, the final assessment, the warehouses are really just a repeat of the history of how we got
What
here.
page, Jim?
56.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 56, page 56. What the law calls it. Anyway, all of the whereases are just reciting the history of how we got here. The last two are whereas that study's been received, meaning the engineering was studied, and notices were mailed to all property owners by first-class mail on Friday, July 8th, informing them of the estimated special assessment amount per buildable lot and the public hearing that has been conducted on this date. And whereas the Board of Commissioners desires to move forward with this process to have the streets repaired to NCDOT standards. Now therefore be it resolved by the Wayne County Board of Commissioners as follows pursuant to NCGS 153A 192. The board hereby directs the county manager to undertake the necessary engineering and design work and the bidding out of the construction for this project and to undertake a debt borrowing for the full amount of the project cost. Then you get the general description of it, and the last paragraph just before section 3 about midway down says, the project shall consist of the engineering, design, and construction of the street and drainage improvements and the removal of any impediments within the street rights-of-way necessary to comply with NCDOT standards for acceptance of the streets, drainage, and rights-of-way into the NCDOT secondary highway system for ownership and maintenance. Then we reiterate that the basis for it is the number of buildable lots, and we state that there are 121 buildable lots. We make it clear that you're going to special assess for 100% of the cost. The Board of Commissioners determines that none of the special assessments for this project will be held in abeyance. And if you want me to, I'll go into a little detail on what that is. Then we get into the payments of the assessments. They're due within 30 days after the notice of confirmation of the assessment. Now what that is if we were to go forward with construction, at the end of that, we would then have the exact cost, because it would, in lieu of the engineer's construction estimate, we would use the actual bid amounts and any change orders. Then we'd get Marcia's administrative cost in there and all that. We would recalculate that, send that back out to people in a first-class mailing and invite them to a public hearing to discuss that, and then at that point you would vote to confirm that, and that would be that's when you set the assessment. Okay. So if they do that, they can pay them over 10 years with 10 equal payments and at a 5% interest rate. And that's pretty much it, but that lays out the process. And so again, today, if they have a valid petition, you could move forward with this resolution. But if they don't have a valid petition, we can't legally move forward, because the statute's clear that in order for you to do this, you have to have a valid petition, which is meeting those 75% criteria. So does anybody have any questions on that?
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. You want to cover that if you would?
Yeah, what we've got in here on page 64, we have been approached by one of the churches, and I got to remember their name. It's
Heart of David.
Yeah, Heart of David. It's in Eureka. I've discussed this with y'all before about the softball diamond there and the property there. It's about 6.5 acres. It's on the books at $39,000 value. I've given you the state law about disposition of county property. So what we're asking you to do is authorize us to declare that surplus and sell the property under the upset bid process with the minimum bid of $39,000, which is what the county has it appraised at. And we do have indications from the church that they're willing to pay at least that on it.
Questions? It's been going on for a while for that piece of property.
How much more property, excuse me, Mr.
Yes, sir,
Chairman.
that's fine, go ahead.
How much more property we're gonna find that we didn't know we owned?
Well, we've got a list of it, and we'll go through that and see what we got. You know, most of it is that farmland and then the FEMA property, but the FEMA property, we can't really do a lot with.
Actually, myself and Commissioner Mayo were approached a couple of years about this property. Yeah, so I've known about it. Anyhow, budget amendments.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The first two budget amendments that I have are to finish up the last fiscal year 15-16. Workers' compensation was $5,219. This is for claims that came in at the end of June that need to be paid out. And the second one is hospitalization. Same thing, it's to finish out 15-16 for $26,389. The next group of budget amendments are for this year. The first one are for the fire districts. This is for money collections that came in towards the end. Sorry about that. This is for money for the fire districts that came in towards the end of the year, and they need to be paid out for various fire departments. The next budget amendment is for HCCBG, Home and Community Care Block Grant. This is also monies that were received at the end of June that we need to reappropriate so we can pay those out to wages. The next one is two more fire districts, same explanation as before. They're collections that we received that we need to pay out. And the last one that I have is for the library. This is for $150 for donations that was received that we need to appropriate.
Any questions? All right, let's move to new business. The application for present use value. Present use value, new business.
The present use value, let me get to that. These are in order. I think we have one. This is the Carlton and Cindy Acon. This was basically delayed because they were going through a estate. So everything's in order, and we recommend you approve it.
Mr. Chairman, I will need to abstain from that
Okay.
item.
All right, let's move on to number two. There's some questions there. Going to number two, if I see Mr. Burns is coming up, he's going to explain to us about the hangar improvements.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. In your agenda packet on page 75 is a memo from my office regarding hangar improvements at the Wayne Executive Jetport. And to give you a little background and history on this item, shortly after the hospital announced their management agreement with UNC, Commissioner Hurley was involved in talks with them regarding an air ambulance to be stationed in the region. And at that time, they had selected 3 sites to look at. They came down and met with us at Wayne County and met in 2 other places. We had several subsequent follow-up meetings with them, and we were able to begin the process of negotiating terms to have an air ambulance located at the jetport. Since that time, we have met additionally with them and also with Facilities Director Kendall Lee, and Kendall's here today if there's any facility-related questions. And then last week, we met with the Facilities Committee on the improvements that would be required at the jetport to accommodate UNC's helicopters. In this memo, we are asking you to allow us to move forward with this project at the jetport to upfit one hangar to house the air operations for UNC Air Care. At the present time, it'll be 1 helicopter and up to 3 ground units, and with additional capabilities to be expanded later to another helicopter and another fixed wing. In anticipation of this, as I mentioned, we started back in late January, early February discussing this. In anticipation of that, we did include an appropriation in the airport budget this year, utilizing some remaining Eastern Region monies that were available. And we're, at this point, we're asking you to allow Kendall's office to move forward with obtaining the work request and quotes on that to get that project moving forward. We've got a probably September, October timeframe that we need to meet on that. We're asking your authorization for that, and myself or Kendall are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions?
I guess we should mention that the proposed lease would be for $4,000 a month. So that would be $48,000 a year. So we're thinking less than 3 years, these improvements would be paid for. And the lease would guarantee that we would get at least those payments should they renew.
Be a 5-year lease with a 5-year renewable option.
Okay, anything else?
And
Yes, sir.
Mr. Parker has been working with me to get that lease finalized and get the language drafted to send to UNC. And I think
He just asked me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Any-
we would like all of this, the motion should be contingent upon execution of the lease, because we're not going to go forward with this work until we have a signed lease.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
All right, the next one is, motion to approve resolution adopting the 7th Amendment to the position classification plan. Was Tommy or Ms. Lee gonna do that? Yeah, I started to tell you just to stay up there.
I wasn't sure if she was gonna do it or I would. In your packet on page 76 is a memo from Ms. Lee. Earlier in the budget process, the county allocated some additional funds to reclass some positions within social services primarily. We also had some other departments that had several requests for reclassifications. Those are detailed in the attached resolution, which would be the 7th Amendment to the Position and Classification Pay Plan. We'll be happy to go through and answer any questions that you have on those, but we were able to stay within our budget that you gave us for reclassifications this year. We've reviewed and vetted all of these and feel like they're in order to maintain our market competitiveness, and we would ask your approval on that.
Does this finish social services?
Yes.
Yes.
Most of it, you'll see in there, most of it is about a 10% increase is what we found, what we were voting.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just want to remind the commissioners, the consultant that we have coming in DSS, the DSS board voted to make this assessment of the different wage classifications a part of his study, and that's not going to interfere with what we're doing here. But I'm just giving that for information, that this will be a part of the study that's, I just signed the contract to move forward with that as chairman of the DSS board. So I thank the county and the commissioners for addressing this in a really quick way, because as you know, we are concerned, all of us are concerned about the turnover rate in DSS. And so I want to just thank the commissioners and George and Tommy, Geraldine, everyone that's involved in this, making sure that this got up. You did it in record time, that's what I'm saying. So thank you so much for that.
He had a lot of encouragement. Did you?
I just wanted to comment that it looks like there were several positions eliminated, and I just want to commend y'all on what you did eliminate, which I know there were some new ones created, but I think we're gonna come out ahead on the eliminations in the new positions.
One thing I did want to mention and remind y'all of, and I'll get close to the mic before Wayne comes out. One thing I did want to mention to you is that these improvements would have cost over $500,000. However, we're in about the 260 to 270 range, which, remember, we set aside 300,000. And the reason for that is that many of our DSS positions are either reimbursed at a 50 or 75% rate, and some at 25%. So that's by the state. So that took that number down to from about 500, I forgot the exact number, 500 something thousand, back down to about 260 to 270.
All right, anything else? Let's move on to number 4, the wastewater engineering contract.
Okay, you have a memo from me there. I'll go through that very quickly. The Facilities Committee met last week, and one of the items discussed was how to proceed on the Grantham Middle School wastewater project. The options are to continue with additional testing for the on-site system and install it, or to put some additional money into the project and build a pump station at Grantham Middle School and a force main from there to our pump station at the landfill. A change in state regulations effective July 1 means we no longer need North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services approval, only the written certification from the engineer. As you know, that's been the holdup in moving forward with the on-site system. After meeting with the engineer and discussing all the options, pros and cons, and estimated cost, the committee voted unanimously to recommend that we install the pump station at Grantham Middle School and a 6-inch force main to the landfill. They also included a smaller system to connect the Grantham Elementary School. The elementary school has had some issues with its drain field, and this would provide a long-term solution for it as well. This option will cost an estimated $800,000 more than the on-site system. The committee also discussed possibly tying in the discharge from the EMS station as well, but decided to hold off on that as we rent that facility and may want to build one in the future at a different location. We currently pay $2,400 a year to rent the drainage field, but the system would cost $49,963. We don't want to pay for that until we make a decision on whether to stay in that location. The committee recommends that you authorize me to negotiate a contract with municipal engineering company to change to this option. We have agreed on an 8% fee, which includes not only design but contract administration and inspection services. The motion should state that you approve of an engineering contract with MESCO for $157,303, with the original contract to be amended to remove this portion of the contract. And so if you make that motion, then board and I will finish negotiating the contract with them as to the specific terms like we normally do.
Any questions, comments? Something in your neighborhood there, Jay?
Yes.
Would you like to make a motion on this one?
I will.
I thought so. Okay, let's move to number 5, the motion to approve construction of metal storage building. There's no pump station.
This is a request from Kendall Lee, and he's made it the Facilities Committee looked at this, and they're in agreement that we should move forward with that. It's a 30 by 45 metal building with a concrete floor. It doesn't require any air conditioning or anything. It's really just to keep our sewer equipment under shelter. It's right now it's totally exposed to the elements. And if you approve then we'd like to accept an award to our lowest responsive bidder, Bear Buildings, located in Franklinville, North Carolina, for $10,950.
Questions, comments?
I'd like to get one built myself.
I was ready to ask, once I hear the cost, I ready to ask how much did it cost,
That's a great price.
That was my question. Does it include the concrete?
Yeah. That's a good deal.
Yeah,
and what size is it?
35 by 45.
35 by 40?
I should have talked to them before I built mine.
That's what I was thinking.
I'll be calling you.
All right, thank you.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Okay. The next item is discussion of the 911 center. I've given you a memo there. As you know, we recently hired the architectural firm of Stewart, Cooper, and Newell to evaluate 3 existing buildings and 2 vacant lots within close proximity to our major communications tower near our facility services office. That report's been received and it's included here. The report recommends that you build a new facility on the vacant land between the facility services office and the animal shelter, and it's referred to in the report as option 4. My recommendation is that you approve their study and authorize me to proceed with the full design of the new 911 center. However, we only have it on the agenda for discussion today, so at that meeting, at the 9 o'clock meeting, I'd like to go through this study with you.
Okay.
But we don't have time right now, obviously.
All right, we've already discussed the additions to the agenda, and then it'll be county manager's comments. You're gonna have a lot to say today.
Not much at all.
And then the Board of Commissioners comments, and we do need a closed session today, don't we?
Yes.
For the purpose of?
To consult me for anything
Do we have a motion to go to closed session?
So moved.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. We'll be back.